is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
In the headlines, just a few days before his summit with Donald Trump in Alaska, Russian President Vladimir Putin says the Trump administration is making vigorous and genuine efforts to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. In Mexico, President Claudia Sheinbaum is defending the use of U.S. drones over her country, insisting that the latest mission was requested by her government to target organized crime. Uganda sounds the alarm and warns it's nearing a breaking point as refugee numbers are expected to hit 2 million by year's end, with funding shortages threatening to overwhelm relief operations. Tensions boil over in Serbia. A third night of violent protests rocks Belgrade, with demonstrations against the government spreading to other cities. In Gaza, the United Arab Emirates completes its latest humanitarian airdrop, bringing total aid delivered to nearly 4,000 tons. A solemn anniversary in South Korea. Survivors of wartime comfort women joined supporters outside the Japanese embassy, marking International Comfort Women Memorial Day. Back in the Philippines, President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. holds his first phone call with South Korea's new leader Lee Jae-myung, both vowing to strengthen bilateral ties. And in sports, the NBA gives the green light to a multi-billion-dollar deal, making William Chisholm the new majority owner of the Boston Celtics. I'm Kristel Guangco. Newsline World starts now. Russian President Vladimir Putin says that the current U.S. administration is making what he called vigorous and genuine efforts to end the fighting in Ukraine. His remarks come ahead of his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump in Alaska on August 15. Putin raised the White House for what he described as active steps to resolve the conflict in Ukraine and lay the groundwork for long-term peace.
Скажу поподробнее. Это первое. И второе, рассказать о том, на каком этапе мы находимся с американской администрацией сегодняшней, которая, как всем хорошо известно, предпринимает, на мой взгляд, достаточно энергичные и искренние усилия для того, чтобы прекратить боевые действия, прекратить кризис и выйти на договоренности, представляющие интерес для всех вовлеченных в этот конфликт сторон, для того, чтобы создать долгосрочные условия мира и между нашими странами, и в Европе, да и в мире в целом, если мы к следующим этапам выйдем на договоренности в области контроля над стратегическими наступательными вооружениями.
The high-profile meeting in Anchorage is expected to cover Ukraine and bilateral economic cooperation. The program includes a one-on-one between Putin and Trump, a wider meeting between delegations, and a joint press conference. Diplomatic exchanges between Moscow and Washington resumed in February, with several phone calls and in-person meetings between officials paving the way for the Friday's summit. Meanwhile, two places in Russia, one near the Ukrainian border and another hundreds of kilometers away, were struck by Ukrainian drones Thursday in one of the most widespread attacks in recent weeks. This incident comes a day before a scheduled summit between President Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in Alaska. Prince Tripoli will give us the details.
Security cameras in Belgrade captured the moment a moving car was struck by a drone in the city center. The impact forced the vehicle off the road, but not before the driver and passengers managed to get out. Moments later, the car exploded in a fireball. Regional Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov says 3 people were injured in that strike. Elsewhere in the city, drones damaged multiple residential buildings, a store, and 6 vehicles. In the nearby village of Razumnoye, a woman was hurt when a UAV hit her home. Russian authorities say Belgrade has faced repeated attacks this week. On Thursday, Philippine time, drones injured 8 civilians and 5 workers from the state-owned Orlan enterprise. Public events have now been cancelled and residents are being urged to stay indoors. Hundreds of kilometers to the south, the city of Rostov-on-Don was also hit in the early morning hours. A video widely shared online shows a plane-type drone gliding toward the city before smashing into the top floors of an apartment complex, causing an explosion and sending smoke into the sky. Other footage shows shattered windows and damaged balconies. Governor Yuri Slusar says at least 13 people were injured, including 2 children, when drones struck 10 multi-story apartment blocks and several vehicles. 6 victims remain in hospital. Local officials say more than 200 residents were evacuated and taken to temporary shelters. The latest drone wave comes just one day before Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump meet in Alaska for a high-stakes summit where a possible Ukraine peace deal is expected to be the main topic. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Prince Tripoli, your citizen correspondent.
Dozens of Ukrainians and Russians are now free in the latest prisoner swap with Russia. The exchange, matched by the release of the same number of Russian prisoners, comes just a day before the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska. Franco Baranda reports.
A long-awaited homecoming. 33 soldiers and 51 civilians crossed back into their homeland, some stepping onto free soil for the first time in years. From Ukrainian side, men and women draped in the blue and yellow flag, wrapping their loved ones in long, tearful embraces. President Volodymyr Zelensky says among them are civilians who have been held since as far as back 2014, and defenders of Mariupol who endured some of the war's most brutal battles. From Moscow, the Russian Defense Ministry confirmed 84 of its servicemen were also freed, and they are now receiving medical and psychological care. Officials say the United Arab Emirates helped mediate the exchange. Prisoner swaps have become a fragile but steady bridge between Russia and Ukraine in recent months, with June and July seeing similar exchanges, including the return of the seriously ill young detainees under 25 and the remains of fallen soldiers. The precise location and timing of this latest reunion have not been independently verified, but for the families waiting, the moment speaks for itself. The wait is over and their loved ones are home. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, Franco Baranda, SMNI News.
In Serbia's capital, violent protests are once again dominating the streets. For a third night, demonstrators and riot police clash in Belgrade, with unrest now spreading across the country. Sarah Santos has the latest.
Hundreds of anti-government protesters faced off against riot police in Belgrade on Thursday night, hurling stones, fireworks, and debris as officers responded with tear gas. Tensions flared between opposing demonstrators, some backing President Alexander Vučić, others calling for his resignation. Multiple skirmishes broke out near the parliament building with refuse containers set ablaze. Earlier, President Vučić vowed to restore order, accusing what he called murderers of fueling the violence. The Interior Ministry says protests erupted in more than 90 locations nationwide, with 47 arrests and over 100 injuries reported in the last 24 hours, including 27 police officers. The student-led movement began last November after a train station canopy collapse in Novi Sad, which killed 16 people. The tragedy sparked accusations of corruption in state infrastructure projects, triggering months of anti-government demonstrations that show no sign of slowing. With tensions still high, police warn more unrest could erupt in the coming days. Reporting, Sarah Santos, SMNI News.
South Sudan is pushing back hard against reports that it has been in discussion with Israel over relocating Palestinians from Gaza. The government says the claims are false and do not reflect its policy. Daniela Paulita will give us the details.
South Sudan's foreign ministry issued a firm rejection Wednesday, denying it has ever discussed resettling Palestinians from Gaza in its territory. The statement described recent media reports as baseless and untrue. The denial comes after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday's interview with another media spoke of allowing Palestinians to voluntarily leave combat zones and, if they wish, Gaza itself. A day later, he reiterated a proposal for forced transfers. On the same day, Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Sharon Haskel wrapped up a one-day visit to South Sudan, while the Israel Defense Forces announced approval of their combat plan in Gaza, including the takeover of Gaza City. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Daniela Paulita as MNI News.
In Uganda's vast refugee settlements, new arrivals keep coming every day. But aid is running thin, and officials warn the strain could soon overwhelm the country's ability to help. More on this from Virgil Parva.
Uganda is on track to host a record 2 million refugees by the end of this year, but authorities warned that shrinking humanitarian funding threatens to overwhelm the country's response. Patrick Okello, Commissioner of the Department of Refugees, said the funding cut is tied to change in U.S. policy.
The current reduction in funding for the refugee response is attributed to the recent change in policy in the U.S. government, which has been the largest funder for the humanitarian assistance, covering food and other refugee programs in the world.
Uganda is already sheltering 1.93 million refugees, more than half of them under the age of 18, making it Africa's largest host nation and the third largest globally. Footage from Kabazana refugee settlement shows construction of new houses and long lines of arrivals waiting for land allocation, while aid workers serve meals to families in canteens. Since January, an average of 600 people a day have crossed into Uganda from Sudan, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Okello stressed that refugees can be an economic asset.
Refugees can start businesses. They are given the opportunity to participate in employment. The refugees pay taxes.
A refugee from Congo expressed her desire to remain in Uganda.
Ndishimye cyane byaba na byiza batanyambuye nkaguma mukondo mba nasubira inyuma. Icyo nasabaga nuko babanza bakadufasha bakaba batubakira amazu bakatwigishiriza abana twamara gufatika.
The refugee response in Uganda is only 25% funded. The UNHCR Refugee Agency is appealing for stronger and sustained support from the global community to secure a safe and dignified life for refugees and host populations. This is Virgil Parva, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Up next, in Mexico, President Claudia Sheinbaum is defending the use of U.S. drones over her country, insisting that the latest mission was requested by her government to target organized crime. A solemn anniversary in South Korea. Survivors of wartime comfort women joined supporters outside the Japanese embassy, marking International Comfort Women Memorial Day. Newsline World will be back after the break.
In 2005, Pastor Apollo Sikibuloy founded the Sunshine Philippines movement. A mission rooted in love for nature and nation. It began as an environmental and humanitarian initiative to reforest Mount Apo, once barren, now a thriving and beautiful place. Through his initiative, thousands of trees have been planted across the Philippines, bringing life and hope to communities. His advocacy, One Tree, One Nation, is also a movement that calls for unity in preserving the environment. Because every tree planted is a step towards unity, healing, and a greater future. Join One Tree, One Nation.
Children will grow up and bring the joy, the love, the peace, and compassion to the whole world. We only have one planet. We only have one Earth. And I hope that this new generation of children that we have reached out will become millions and billions and bring peace on Earth. Bring peace to humanity.
Now we're back for more news. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has held his first phone call with South Korea's new leader, President Lee Jae-myung, reaffirming the strong ties between Manila and Seoul. President Lee assumed office just over 2 months ago on the 4th of June. During the conversation, President Marcos congratulated his counterpart and pledged full support for Lee's administration. Both leaders committed to boosting cooperation in trade and investment, defense and security, as well as people-to-people exchanges. Marcos Jr. thanked South Korea for its continued support of the country's developmental goals and underscored the need for sustained international backing for Manila's maritime interests and regional stability. He also looked forward to meeting President Lee in person at high-level gatherings, including the APEC summit that South Korea is hosting later this year. In response, Lee expressed his support for closer ASEAN-Korea cooperation, with the Philippines set to chair ASEAN in 2026. In Seoul, the rain poured, but so did the determination. Survivors of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, now in their 90s, stood alongside supporters outside Japan's embassy, marking International Comfort Women Memorial Day and renewing their decades-long call for justice. More on this from Justin Azario.
South Koreans gathered outside Japan's embassy in Seoul earlier this week, marking International Comfort Women Memorial Day. The day honors victims forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II. It's observed every August 14, and for nearly 35 years, activists have rallied here every Wednesday, rain or shine. This week, heavy rain didn't stop survivors and supporters from showing up.
여러분 이렇게 나와주셔서 눈물이 납니다. 고맙습니다. 고맙습니다. 고맙습니다.
Most surviving victims are now in their 90s. One protester said, continued action is vital.
편하지 않고 말하지 않으면 안 그래도 들어주지 않는데 더 들어주지 않을 게 뻔하니까 이렇게 잊혀질 바에야 계속해서 행동하고 나서면 사람들이 이렇게 많이 모일 수 있으니.
Shin Hae-seo, who heads the Korea Center for UN Human Rights Policy, stressed the importance of education in keeping the issue alive, citing the role of organizations in protests, museums, and preserving records.
If we have will to preserve and teach the next generation, it will survive. All these organizations involved in it still continue to teach students, ordinary people, through our activities and through Wednesday demonstrations, through the documents that we keep through our museums.
The weekly gatherings began in 1991 after the first public testimony by a survivor and have since become one of the world's longest-running protests, reflecting a decades-long pursuit of justice. Justin Azario, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Terrifying moments for passengers on a Virgin Australia flight from Sydney to Brisbane after the plane plunged 28,000 feet within seconds on Thursday night. Flight VA993 lost cabin pressure about 40 minutes after takeoff, forcing pilots to make an emergency descent from 37,000 to under 10,000 feet. Oxygen masks deployed as flight attendants moved through the cabin to reassure passengers. Virgin Australia confirmed it was a depressurization event, adding that the pilots followed the standard safety procedures and made a precautionary pan call to air traffic control. The flight landed safely in Brisbane with no injuries reported. The aircraft will now undergo a full engineering inspection as the airline reviews the incident against its safety standards. Honors, pride, and a promise to serve. Today, the country's premier maritime academy sent off its newest batch of graduates. And at the helm of the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy's class of 2025 is a valedictorian whose journey began with his parents' unwavering belief. This story from President Cataro.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. led the commencement ceremonies for the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy or PMMA class of 2025, known as the Kadaligdan class, held on August 15, 2025 in San Narciso, Zambales. The Kadaligdan batch, short for Kawal ng Dalampasigan Liwanag ng Karagatan, consisted of 252 cadets. Among them, 144 are graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Marine Transportation, while 108 earned a Bachelor of Science in Marine Engineering. Topping the class is Midshipman First Class Mark John Castañeto from Llanera, Nueva Ecija. He is the son of a retired elementary school teacher and a retired bus conductor.
Noong mismo nagduda ako sa sarili ko, kayong nagsabi sa akin, anak, kaya mo yan. At ang dahil po sa inyo, eto ako ngayon. May uniforme, may layunin, at higit sa lahat ay may pusong handang maglingkod.
Founded over 2 centuries ago, the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy is a government-funded pioneer institution in maritime education. It has produced some of the country's finest merchant marine officers who serve across the global marine and maritime sectors. Graduates of PMMA typically join the Philippine Navy, Philippine Coast Guard, or Merchant Marine Fleet as licensed marine engineers and deck officers. They play a vital role in upholding the Philippines' status as a key player in international maritime affairs while strengthening the nation's maritime defense capabilities. For God and for my beloved country, the Philippines, this has been Kristel Guangco, SMNI News.
Retirement doesn't have to mean staying at home and slowing down. In fact, the National Commission of Senior Citizens says it's time to break that mindset, and they're working with both the government and the private sector to open new job opportunities for older Filipinos, from malls to historic sites. This report from Ina Mortel.
For years, many have believed that senior citizens should simply stay home after retirement. But the National Commission of Senior Citizens, or NCSC, says it's time to change that thinking.
I think we need to educate our people also, lalo na ang family members, na pag nag-retire na ang kanilang mga mahal sa buhay, huwag nilang itali sa bahay na, dapat hindi ka na magtrabaho, dapat na magpahinga ka na. There has to be a removal of that mindsetting. Kasi pag wala silang ginagawa, mas nalulungkot sila at nagkakaroon ngayon ng feeling of isolation.
The NCSC is now working with government agencies and private companies to give seniors equal job opportunities. One major mall chain is planning to hire senior citizens as part of its regular workforce.
Sa SM naman, more on employment yung kanila, na kung saan lahat ng malls nila ay magkakaroon ng certain percentage ng workforce na senior citizens. Titingnan natin kung ano-anong mga areas ng kanilang trabaho pwede sila.
The Commission and the mall operator are forming a technical working group to set the hiring process. They'll define suitable roles, work hours, and wage rates. The NCSC is also teaming up with the University of the Philippines Institute of Aging to craft medical guidelines that ensure the safety of senior workers. But job opportunities won't be limited to malls. The agency is also opening doors in the tourism sector. Before September ends, a tour guiding program will be launched in Intramuros, Manila in partnership with the Department of Tourism and the city government.
Meron po tayong ilulunsad na tour guiding livelihood opportunity sa Intramuros, sa City of Manila, bago po matapos ang Setyembre. Kasama natin ang Department of Tourism at ang City of Manila.
Up to 30 applicants will be chosen for a free 7-day seminar covering tour guiding skills and the history of Intramuros. To qualify, they must be Manila residents, physically fit, at least 60 years old, and able to speak English. For God, my beloved Philippines, this has been Ina Mortel, SMNA News.
In other news, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum dismissed claims of unauthorized U.S. drone operations over Mexican territory, stressing that the latest flight was requested by her government to aid an organized crime probe. Almar Frasuelo files this report.
Speaking at a press briefing, Sheinbaum clarified that a U.S. Customs and Border Protection or CBP drone assisted in an investigation unrelated to migration on Wednesday. She said the mission was conducted within the frameworks of collaboration and only involved equipment Mexico does not possess. Sheinbaum also highlighted ongoing bilateral cooperation to combat arms and drug trafficking, including fentanyl, but urged Washington to address domestic distribution and money laundering issues.
¿Quién vende el fentanilo en las ciudades de Estados Unidos? En Filadelfia, que queda del otro lado, en el este. ¿Cómo llega hasta allá el fentanilo? ¿Quién lo distribuye? ¿Quién lo vende? El lavado de dinero en Estados Unidos, porque ¿dónde queda ese dinero por la venta de fentanilo y de otras drogas? Entonces ellos tienen que hacer su parte también en los Estados Unidos.
Both countries have recently strengthened security ties through initiatives like the Trilateral Fentanyl Committee and the North American Drug Dialogue, which focus on intelligence sharing, training, and joint operations. Reporting for Newsline World, Almar Frasuelo, SMNI News.
Up next, in Gaza, the United Arab Emirates completes its latest humanitarian airdrop, bringing total aid delivered to nearly 4,000 tons. And in sports, the NBA gives the green light to a multi-billion-dollar deal, making William Chisholm the new majority owner of the Boston Celtics. Newsline World will return.
Hala, magnanakaw!
Magnanakaw! Magnanakaw!
Uy, magnanakaw!
Magnanakaw! Magnanakaw!
Ano kayang gagawin ko? Ipamimigay ko yung konti para tumigil sila sa pag-iingay.
Pare, magnanakaw, namimigay ng pera.
Ito ang sayo.
Wow! Ang bait ng magnanakaw!
Ito naman sayo.
Kuya, yung
eto
share ko. Sana
Huwag ka nang maingay. Eto pa. Tama na yan. Nakikipalato lang kayo eh. Huwag nang maingay. Diba? Konti lang pinamigay ko, mabait na ako. Tahimik na sila. Easy. Ngayon, pwede ko na tong suluhin.
Masaya ang mga tao, pero tama po ba ito? Di po ba ang nakikinabang sa magnanakaw ay kasabwat ng magnanakaw?
Ikaw, kinukonsenti mo ba ang legal na korupsyon?
The United Arab Emirates has completed 70th humanitarian airdrop to Gaza. The latest mission is part of a growing international effort to ease the suffering in the war-torn enclave. Over the skies of Gaza, parachutes once again carried food and essentials to the ground. From the cargo bay of a military aircraft, packages tumble into the air, parachuting into areas where supplies have run desperately low. On Wednesday, the UAE's Birds of Goodness campaign under the Gallant Night Free initiative completed its 70th airdrop. This latest operation was carried out in cooperation with Jordan and with support from France, Germany, Belgium, and Italy. Crates being loaded into military aircraft before cascading down over different areas of Gaza. On the ground, displaced civilians rushing to gather the supplies. The shipment included essential food items prepared with the help of Emirati charitable organizations aimed at meeting the urgent needs of the population. Meanwhile, the Palestinian death toll in Gaza rises to more than 61,000, with over 100,000 and 906 injured since the conflict began between Hamas and Israel in October 2023, according to the latest figures of Gaza's health authorities. Former Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra has been ordered into 5 months of preventive detention over allegations of accepting bribes during his time as Moquegwa's regional governor, making him the 5th ex-president to be jailed in recent years. Jane Codita files this report.
A judge at Lima's National Superior Court of Specialized Criminal Justice granted the public prosecutor's request on Wednesday, citing evidence that Vizcarra allegedly received 2.3 million soles, equivalent to more than $611,000 from construction firms between 2011 and 2014. The payments are linked to the Lomas de Hilo development and the construction of Moquegua Hospital. Footage from the courtroom showed Vizcarra seated beside his legal team as the ruling was read. Outside, supporters rallied with chants in support of Vizcarra. His lawyer, Erwin Sicha, condemned the decision as a sign of the judicial system's decline and announced plans to appeal. In a video released after the hearing, Vizcarra accused a hidden power in the shadows of influencing the country's political system. Prosecutors are seeking a 15-year prison term if convicted. Vizcarra's detention adds him to the growing list of former Peruvian leaders, including Alejandro Toledo, Ollanta Humala, and Pedro Castillo, who have faced preventive imprisonment in recent years. This has been Jane Codita, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
China is opening its doors wider to attract young scientific and technological talent from around the world. The measures signed into law by the Chinese premier will take effect on October. Valdivina Gracia for the details.
China is adding a new entry in its visa rule book, and it's aimed squarely at the next generation of global innovators. Starting October 1, the country will roll out the K visa, a category reserved for young professionals in science, technology, education, and cultural exchange. Under a State Council decision signed by Premier Li Qiang, the new visa will join China's existing 12 categories, but with extra flexibility. Holders will be allowed multiple entries, a longer validity period, and extended stays compared with other visa types. Applicants won't need a Chinese employer or an official invitation, just the right age, educational background, and professional experience as set by Chinese authorities. The joint statement from China's 4 government departments says the visa will also be open to individuals involved in prestigious universities and research institutions. The aim is to make the process as smooth as possible. The application steps are being streamlined, cutting red tape for those who meet the criteria. For China, the K visa isn't just another travel document, but also a tool to bring in talent, ideas, and collaboration from across the globe, strengthening its position as a hub for science, technology, cultural exchange, and education. Reporting for Newsline World, this is Valdivina Gracia, SMNA News.
From a sparkling diamond that's fueling engagement buzz for Liam Hemsworth to a sparkling lantern that's lighting up Broadway, we've got the love, the glitter, and the music that's making headlines tonight. Here's Andrea Santos for our showbiz news.
It looks like love may be in full bloom and possibly headed for the aisle for Liam Hemsworth and Gabriella Brooks. The couple has set off engagement rumors after Gabriella was seen sporting a sparkling diamond ring on that finger during Chris Hemsworth's 42nd birthday bash in Ibiza, Spain on August 10. All eyes, however, quickly turned to Gabriella, who wore a yellow polka dot sundress, black sandals, and sunglasses. But it was the eye-catching diamond on her left hand that had guests talking. The duo first sparked dating rumors back in 2019 when Gabriela was photographed spending time with Liam's parents in Australia. They kept their romance low-key for the most part, only making their official public debut in 2021 at the Gold Dinner charity event alongside Chris Hemsworth and Elsa Pataki. While the pair has stayed mostly private, reports say sources close to the couple say the relationship is rock solid. With that dazzling diamond ring now making headlines, fans are wondering if Liam and Gabriela are ready to take the next big step. Meanwhile, Broadway's getting the party started again, and the soundtrack is unmistakably ABBA. The smash hit musical Mamma Mia returns to its original home, the Winter Garden Theater, reopening Thursday night to a roaring response. After a decade away, the show's disco spirit is once again lighting up New York. With sold-out previews and a wave of nostalgia, its 2015 curtain call now feels more like See You Again. In just 7 previews, Mamma Mia grossed $1.57 million, trailing only Wicked, The Lion King, and Hamilton. Since its 1999 London debut, the jukebox musical has become a global phenomenon, packed with more than 20 ABBA hits, from Dancing Queen to Waterloo. Its return is riding a wave of intergenerational fandom. The choreography and glitter remain vibrant, but what makes Mamma Mia timeless is its universal appeal. With packed houses and palpable buzz, it's once again the life of the Broadway party, and it feels like it's here to stay. This is Andrea Santos, your citizen correspondent, bringing you the latest showbuzz.
From the Middle East to the NBA to sports headlines making waves tonight, Cristiano Ronaldo is making a major personal announcement while committing his long-term future to Saudi Arabia. And across the Atlantic, the NBA has approved the $6.1 billion sale of the Boston Celtics, making William Chisholm the team's new majority owner. Here's Carlos de la Peña for the latest sports news.
The couple, together for nearly a decade, have been living openly in Riyadh since 2022. Under Saudi law, unmarried couples are traditionally prohibited from cohabiting, yet authorities appear to have tolerated their situation, highlighting a legal gray area for high-profile expatriates. Their engagement also fuels debate over Saudi Arabia's investments in global sports. Critics argue that hosting major events and signing international stars like Ronaldo is part of a sports-washing strategy aimed at improving the kingdom's international image despite human rights concerns. Ronaldo, who joined Al Nassr in 2022, has extended his contract with the Saudi club until 2027. The 40-year-old football star described Saudi Arabia as peaceful and declared it his permanent home, saying he will stay 2 more years as a football player, but also for life. It's official. The Boston Celtics are changing hands in a record-breaking deal. The NBA's Board of Governors has unanimously approved the sale to Massachusetts native and lifelong Celtics fan William Chisholm. He first struck the deal back in March. Chisholm's group will take a 51% stake from the Grusbeck family right away, with the rest of the shares transferring in 2028. Once the paperwork is done, Chisholm becomes the team's lead governor, while Wick Grusbeck stays on as alternate governor and CEO through the 2027 to 2028 season. The price tag? A whopping $6.1 billion. A North American record at the time, later topped by the $10 billion sale of the Los Angeles Lakers. Reporting for Newsline World, this is Carlo de la Peña, bringing you the latest sports news.
In China, one tech company is turning the tide on marine pollution, and that's by making ocean waste into something valuable and profitable. Let's find out more about this with Joy Tabanao.
For Kristel Guangco, co-founder of Blue Circle Technology, the challenge was clear. The cost of recycling plastic dragged from the sea is far higher than using fresh plastic. But instead of seeing a dead end, he turned the tide by creating a system that makes ocean waste worth collecting. If marine debris could be made valuable, it would no longer be waste. It would be a resource. On land, a discarded plastic bottle might be worth half a cent. From the ocean, it's worth 3 times as much. That price difference is enough to turn fishermen into ocean cleaners, pulling litter from the water alongside their daily catch. collected debris is transformed into high-value products, from car parts to clothing fabrics, with the profits flowing back to those who collected. By partnering with coastal fishermen and funding cleanup through premium price and products, Blue Circle has built a cycle where commerce and conservation sail together toward cleaner oceans. Joy Tibanao, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
And before we end, may you be inspired with the words of the sun. As long as you are sincere in seeking for salvation, the Father will not lead you astray. And that's all for this edition of Newsline World. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Kristel Guangco. Thank you for watching.
This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.